This person says, I have a hard time believing that the president knows what rare earth minerals actually are. He recently gave an improvised speech on TV explaining that nobody knows what rare earth minerals actually are, but that he knows that they are magnets, and that nobody knows what magnets are or how magnets work. And he went on to explain that it would take 2 years to build a magnet factory in the US. Now, it's true that some rare earth minerals are used to create certain kinds of magnets, for example, neodymium, but that's not what we need them for. They're used in lithography, they're used in battery chemistries, and one of the really interesting things here is that actually we don't need to do that. We have alternative chemistries we could be using. For example, iron phosphate, which is all that I use for my projects. And it doesn't have the potential for thermal runaway, it doesn't require any rare earth minerals, it's already cheaper, it has a lower energy density, so you need more of them, and you'll survive that. We're in this era of like, the iPhone has to be as thin as a credit card. And it's like, why? Because those kinds of sales commitments, when turned into engineering products, right, like, you have to make all these weird concessions with chemistries that are more harmful to the world by using cobalt, by using all of these other things that you don't necessarily need to use if you had a more holistic view of product design. A really good example is the history of nuclear power plants. We had engineers designing really good, really safe power plants. And then you had salespeople multiplying all the numbers by 10 and selling that to cities and states and municipalities around the world. And then engineers were tasked with making that happen. And it's like there's this exponential risk curve with nuclear power plants. If you do these huge power levels, the risk is off the charts. That's why they were designed to be smaller, right? But the engineers were after the salespeople, right? The salespeople sold this idea of huge nuclear power plants, and the engineers were forced to create them, and they were less safe. It's the same with all of our technology today. This is very closely tied in with the argument that I'm always making about why RISC is morally superior to CISC as an instruction set architecture for CPUs. Because if you're building devices that include as ISA extensions application-specific integrated circuits for things like doing SSL, for things like doing particular video codecs, like HEVC now, or various other things. There are countless extensions now, right? The vast majority of the real estate on these CPUs is dedicated to application-specific hardware that will only work with one specific application and can't do anything else. Okay. The problem with that is that you have new stuff come out, right? A new codec comes out. Suddenly your computer doesn't work anymore, and you have to buy a new one. Whereas if we were designing real computers that didn't include all of these application-specific shortcuts, computers that could handle these tasks that are really not that complicated, right? Then we wouldn't need to buy a new one every year. And that's a big part of why we design them so poorly, is so that people need to buy a new one every year. And every time you buy a new one, you need more rare earth minerals in the lithography processes that are currently being used. There are so many ways in which our society prioritizes destructive alternatives to more sustainable options with things across the board, which is why we need so much of these esoteric and rare ingredients to be able to produce consumer goods. And it's not necessary.